when you're married with 2 small children, and you can get away with being kissed 5 times a night for 3 weeks by a handsome ne'er-do-well, a scoundrel, an absolute rake who is not your husband, you do it. But you don't tell anyone how much you enjoyed it until now. It was summer. There was a whole lot of outdoor Shakespeare going on. The theater that my husband and I had started years before was humming along. I was playing Kate in our production of The Taming of the Shrew. For those of you a little foggy on your Shakespeare, that's the one about Catherine, a sharp-witted, intelligent, unmarried, and therefore problematic woman who is forced to marry the charming rogue Petruchio, who decides he's going to tame her out of her shrewish personality, and then proceeds to do so using sleep deprivation, starvation, gaslighting. Hilarious, right? It's a problematic role for a woman in our era, and it can kind of mess with your head. My Petruchio was a wonderful actor who I had worked with before, but this was our first romantic pairing. Now, in our production, in between the verbal and physical sparring between Kate and Petruchio, our characters shared 5 kisses over the course of the show. I came to really enjoy the rehearsal process, where I got to discover my character's wants, needs, and actions. But if I'm honest, it's because I really loved discovering how much I loved wanting, needing, and getting some action. I loved my husband. I mean, it wasn't like I was fantasizing about running off with Petruchio in some sort of community theater stage romance gone too far sort of thing. The offstage Petruchio was a really nice guy, kind, respectful, easygoing, married. I wasn't interested in that guy. But the bragging, self-centered, conceited, domineering, really good kisser that was on stage Petruchio had me hot and bothered. Who knew that I had a thing for fictional bad boys? I was a mess. It hijacked my brain, not to mention my libido. I found myself thinking about it during the day, thinking about that night's performance. I would be driving along, my adorable 2-year-old in her car seat behind me, chattering away, telling me about her stuffed animal raccoon crackers and what he just did. But really, I was thinking about kiss number 3, when Petruchio puts his cheek out for me to give him a chaste little peck, but at the last minute he turns his head and bam, right on the kisser. Or I would be listening to my 5-year-old telling me about the dance she just learned in her summer camp, but really I was thinking about kiss number 1 after our first round of physical and verbal sparring, where he pins me to the ground and lays a good one on me. Now, this was the mid-90s, and consent was never really a thing in Shakespeare's time. But I was no slouch with the stage combat. So the other thing that had me confused this summer was Jane Eyre. Now, in case you're not up on your Brontes, that's the one about the orphan turned, she was a governess, and she falls in love with her employer, Mr. Rochester, the irascible, brooding Mr. Rochester. Now, like Petruchio with Kate, Mr. Rochester messes with her head. So there I was. I would spend my evening as the much abused and much kissed Kate, a woman mired in a patriarchy with very little control over her life. And then I would go home, crawl into bed with my copy of Jane Eyre, and sail off to sleep on the story of another woman whose life was controlled by an arrogant man. And I loved it. The lifelong feminist in me was so deeply ashamed, but still very horny. Like I said, a mess. The other thing I found about this play was, and these kisses, was that they left their mark. So Petruchio was a dark blonde, and the goatee he grew for the part came in a bit on the light side, so he used a little bit of makeup to darken it up, a little bit of mascara. I don't know how many performances ended with me all aglow from that 5th and final kiss, taking my bow, now the unwitting owner of my own mascara mustache, courtesy of my smooching swain, but there were a few. He finally noticed and very gently told me that he would stop using that Maybelline Deluxe Lash Enhancer in Foxy Dark Brown. As an actor, I have found that there are some roles that leave a lasting impression. On the final performance of our run, as Petruchio and I were standing off stage waiting to make our final entrance into our final scene, me a little bit melancholy, anticipating my final kiss, we looked at each other and smiled silently. He put his hand on the small of my back. It wasn't a kiss, but it felt like an electric pulse. And 25 years later, I can tell you, I can still feel it. Thank you.
I don't